Guild Wars 2 was the story of a struggle. A struggle between the intelligent, free and armed races of the world as they were threatened by its most ancient of entities, terrifying, elemental, destructive forces, long since sleeping, now awoken, the Elder Dragons. That world was Tyria. Home to many varied and magic-wielding races, the planet lives a cyclical life. Magics flowing through ley lines deep beneath the surface of the planet gradually build up, seeping into the soil. But when those magics become too great, the Elder Dragons awake. They feed on the excess, restoring balance to the planet but causing destruction in the process. Species are wiped out in periods of mass extinction that can last years. And then, the Elder Dragons fall asleep again. Enough time passes, and the world, growing anew, forgets. Now, the Elder Dragons are back. The humans have been abandoned by their gods, and the other races too are struggling. The Norn, the Asura, and the Char, all waiting as a looming shadow spreads over them. Not all hope is lost, though. 25 years ago, the Sylvari arose. Many believed this new race were born to turn the tide. But unless all people could unite, it would not be enough. Guild Wars 2's story is made of two. The story of the Pact, and the story of Destiny's Edge, one of armies and alliances and war, and one of estranged friends and love and loss. Both integral to the destruction of Zitan, both a wild hunt waiting to be fulfilled. You begin in the home of your respective race, learning your people's history and their problems. Some would say this is where the story of Guild Wars 2 was at its strongest. While there were multiple paths and many decisions to be made, all meticulously planned out, and while it remains truly a personal story to you. But not every player can be the great saviour of the planet, and soon your attention turns away from the smaller issues faced by your race to the Elder Dragons, in particular, Zitan. Zitan was not the first, or necessarily the most powerful dragon to awake, but he was a threat. He had been sleeping beneath the human nation of Gorr. This was a peninsula once sunk beneath the waves by the warring and activity of the races above. When Zitan awoke, though, he rose Gorr back to the surface with him. The Dragon of Death. He corrupted, zombified and reanimated bodies rotting in the streets. Zitan made his lair in Ara, the abandoned city of the human gods, and began to build an army. As a response to the dragon's growing threat, 3 separate organisations on Tyria, all with different origins and motivations, began recruiting people to their cause. These were the Orders of Tyria: the Dermid Priory, Scholars and Knowledge Seekers, the Vigil, War Masters and Brawlers, and the Order of Whispers, Information Gatherers and Spies. But the Orders did not work together, each choosing their own path. You join one of these orders and slowly begin to rise through its ranks. Soon, scouting parties of undead are detected at one of the largest cities on the continent, Lion's Arch. Zitan's influence had been ever growing, his armies invading and pressing further north for years now. Fearing an attack from the dragon, the orders gathered at Claw Island, an offshore fortress that would be the first to fall in the event of an attack. It is here that the player meets Traherne, a Sylvari scholar of Gorr. He was a notable firstborn, just one of 2 Sylvari to have ever seen the undead dragon Zitan and survived. But Traherne was flawed. At birth, he was granted an irresistible calling known as a wild hunt, a task he must complete. But his wild hunt was deemed impossible. It was to cleanse the lands of Gorr of their corruption. So he had spent many languished years in Gorr, learning the Risen and their ways, but had come no closer to the completion of his task. While the Lion Guard of Claw Island did not believe an attack was imminent, Traherne did. He was right. A fleet of unholy ships rose from the depths and besieged the people. The Lion Guard could not rally in time. Minor victories were made here and there, but when Blightgast the Plaguebringer, a great winged beast, arrived on the scene, all was lost. The Lion Guard forces made a hasty retreat, but at a great cost of lives, including the death of a dear friend to the player character. The Orders had little time to prepare before Zitan's armies attacked Lion's Arch itself. They spread across the world in the search of reinforcements and new technologies to help them in their fight. Most notably now was what the Order of Whispers achieved. They made a weapon with the help of Professor Gorr. Gorr was an Asuran genius with a bizarre theory. He knew that the Elder Dragons consumed magic, and so What if they made a weapon which could poison magic? The Risen would feast on it and be destroyed. His theory proven right, and the technology in hand, the tides could turn. But Traherne was not comfortable. Merely a scholar, not a warrior, he returned to his home, the Pale Tree. Seeking advice, it was here that Traherne was granted a vision. It was of awe, and a mighty army of the Free Peoples marching through it, cleaving the Risen and devastating Zitan's armies. Traherne, a war leader, was at their head. He called to his people and motivated them, shouted in defiance at the dragon and felt it quiver in fear. The vision taught Traherne that he was born to be more than a scholar, he would be a general. With this, Traherne and the Orders of Tyria attempted a counterstrike to retake Claw Island. Working together this time, under Traherne's supervision and with Gorr's experimental technology, the Dermond Priory, Vigil and Order of Whispers stormed the fortress and emerged victorious. On the heels of this victory, Traherne formed the Pact, a unification of the Orders of Tyria, a unification of the greatest thinkers, fighters and intelligence gatherers on the continent, a unification of the races. The victory at Claw Island had proven Zitan was not unstoppable. Traherne would take the fight to him. But still, the Pact was not enough. The Pale Tree had also shown Traherne a vision of failure. Should Destiny's Edge not reunite, Zitan could not be stopped. Only 2 Sylvari had seen the undead Elder Dragon and survived. Traherne was one, and Kaith was the other. Both, too, had seemingly impossible wild hunts, but while Traherne saw a land to cleanse and heal, Kaith only sought to kill the architect of its corruption. Her calling was to kill an Elder Dragon. Destiny's Edge were a band of heroes who roamed the world slaying Elder Dragon champions. Kaith was one of its 6 members, but when they tried to kill Kraukatoric 5 years ago, they failed. This had resulted in the death of one of their number and the breaking of the group. Kaith hatched her plan, a call for all to Lion's Arch, and each member would be lured into a chance meeting with one another. Kaith could convince them to put the past behind them and reform as Dragon Slayers once more. They would assault Zitan, and her wild hunt would be fulfilled. But her trick did not pay off. Still wounded by the past, her old friends would not reunite, and Kaith returned home empty-handed. However, the meeting had not fallen entirely on deaf ears. Air was the Norn who had taken charge when Destiny's Edge last fought side by side, and she hatched her own plan. She would retrieve Magdair, lost relic of the Ascalon nation, to quell the hatred between her human and Char companions. Again, the plan did not work. Logan Thackeray, the human, and Ritlock Brimstone, the Char, who now hated each other, were left simply feeling manipulated, and would not bury the hatchet. After the death of his brother, Logan had sworn to protect his homeland as personal guard to the Queen. He had abandoned Destiny's Edge during their time of need and still stood by his decision. But Queen Jenna would allow it no longer, saying he was destined for greater things. Gayron Balefire, a Char threat, was gaining influence, and Logan was dispatched to deal with him. Perhaps by no coincidence, so was Ritlock Brimstone, and the 2 men, for the first time in 5 years, set aside their differences to fight side by side. When Logan saved Ritlock's life, the 2 tentatively reconciled. Air, in the meantime, had fallen into depression. After all, she was the leader that let her team down. She wasn't the great Norn tactician she should have been, and even her attempts to reunite her friends had been in vain. She embarked on a suicide mission to save the Kodan of Honor of the Waves, one final heroic deed in order to go out as any Norn legend deserved to. But Kaith cunningly had been tracking her. She joined Air on her fool's mission and ensured the Norn's survival. News of Ritlock and Logan had not yet reached the women, but if they were all to meet up now, already 4 of the 5 members of Destiny's Edge would be together again. The 5th member would not come so easy. Zogja was an Asura. It had always been difficult for her to cede leadership to a Norn, and she could not forgive Air for her failure. Air had caused the death of her mentor, Snaf, and this was not easily forgotten. Instead, Zogja had a mission of her own. Her rival, Kudu, was abusing Snaf's research into the Elder Dragons. Even after being assisted by a reunified Ritlock and Logan, Zogja still could not bring herself to rejoin the team. Maybe that didn't matter. Mostly, Kaith had done it. Destiny's Edge had come back together. They would join the Free Peoples of Tyria in one final assault on Zitan. But the Pale Tree had predicted failure if they were not all there, and Kaith only hoped Zodja would come to her senses before it was too late. Since Claw Island, Traherne had formed the Pact, unifying the three orders in one concerted effort against Zitan. He had established supply lines, encampments and roads many miles south, right to the border of the lost kingdom of Orr. Here he had created Fort Trinity, an architectural marvel and first, a blend of all races and technologies together. He had overseen the creation of an army, a navy, and fleets of airships. One huge theatre of war. He would meet Zitan on the grounds, on the seas, and in the skies. He had the spy networks of an order 1,000 years old, all the knowledge of the ancient world yet gathered, and the strength of Tyria's most powerful warriors at his fingertips. He learned how Zitan operated, feeding on magic artifacts to grow. As Gorr had predicted, he consumed magic, ever hungry for more. Zitan had his own ships for fighting, for collecting bodies. He had dragons and abominations and bones. He had generals and leaders of his own, commanders that would strategize and send the Risen where they would be most deadly. This was war. The Pact's goal was Arrah, capital of the Orrian nation and site of Zitan's roost. Gorr's technology had been proven to work. The plan was to fire a beam of concentrated magic at Zitan, to take his own magics, corrupt them, and send them back to him. He would feed on them, and rather than grow, it would destroy him. For this, Traherne constructed the Glory of Tyria, an enormous airship equipped with Gorr's laser technology. They would lure Zitan out like a rat in a hole and destroy it. The path to Arrah was fraught with loss, but with slow and steady progress they made it. Here, the player character united with Destiny's Edge and, during the last hour, Zodja, having come to her senses, arrived on the scene. A unified group, the heroes cleaved through the city of the gods. At last, Zitan was drawn from hiding. A fierce battle in the skies took place until finally Gorr's laser hit dead on. Clinging to an ancient Orrian tower, perhaps constructed by the now fled gods, Zitan swung back. But it was not enough for him. Faced by overwhelming strength, he was shot down, falling from the crumbling tower and reeling into the depths once more. And with that, the story concludes. Kaith's wild hunt was complete. She had seen the downfall of Zitan and Destiny's Edge had been unified. Traherne's wild hunt was not quite so complete. The healing of Orr could begin, but this would be a long process, even with Zitan defeated. The game ends on an open note, with the Pact now established, an indomitable force now tempered by battle. Which Elder Dragon would be next?